Either way, I'm glad you're here, man. I'm glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. That aside, I still can remember back in the day when I went to my local store sometimes to get a brand new game for my DS, the Wii or a PlayStation 2, only if I have grinded my ass off at school, taking it home, booting it up, and hearing this or this, and even this, and a whole new world of immersive new experience unfolds in front of you, like, to keep yourself occupied for the next 3 to 5 months until you have grinded at school again to get your next game. No DLCs, no battle passes, no pre-order bonuses, no early access to pay for, or a lot of content that's locked up behind a paywall. It was just the complete game with an extra book with tips and tricks and a guide of the whole game to read while you were on your way home. Those days were amazing, I'm not gonna lie. Those evoke a little warm, nostalgic feeling inside of me. You know what I'm saying? Back when games had to actually stand on their own, like they couldn't rely on live service updates or microtransactions to keep us hooked, you know? I remember when the focus was on making something genuinely good and trying to surprise their audience with something new and something refreshing. But as they grew bigger, I think the AAA studios stopped caring about that along the way. Now it's just about shinier graphics, bigger maps, and stuffing as much monetization schemes as possible into a single game. And I think the result of that is everything just feels the same, and there's almost zero to none creativity and innovation. And I think that's why indie games are getting more popular and becoming more mainstream, you know. Sure, they do not have a $1 billion budget or Hollywood actors. Like, you're not gonna see Keanu Reeves mid cutscene telling you that you're breathtaking, or Idris Elba voicing a generic badass in the DLC, or hell, even Snoop Dogg rage quitting his own game here.
Fuck! Come on, man. Ain't no need for this. Just join with me. I earned the city fair and square.
You broke the code.
Fuck the code. D-Mob was always talking that old school loyalty bullshit. You from the streets, you know there's only one code out here that matters. Ride or get rolled on. Hey, hold on. Fuck this shit. Came in this fucking room and everything went fucking bad. Fuck this shit, man.
But honestly, none of that actually matters if you do not have the core of what makes a game great, the passion and creativity, and the fact that you put your heart and soul in it. Indie studios experiment with unique mechanics and take risks and try things AAA studios wouldn't even try to dare to take them, because they're trying to follow trends or please their shareholders and investors. And I think that's why the indie games are getting much more recognition than way before. So today we're gonna talk about how indie games fixed what the AAA games kind of broke and don't have that magic anymore, and why they have become the real heart of gaming. Because honestly, nothing beats more than diving deep into a specific topic, surfing over the internet, finding tiny little details to obsess over, and share all my analysis and opinions and thoughts over it. Because why not? So, how did the indie games go from overlooked passion projects to redefining the entire gaming industry? Well, let's start in the beginning with a small team with minimum budget, working in the basements, leveling up and changing the entire game. We're talking about the titles that broke the rules, took risks, like Undertale, Hollow Knight, and so many much more. At their very core, Indie games are all about creativity and then freedom. They're free from the expectations of shareholders and the big giants of the entire industry. And they do pretty much everything at their own pace to make the best game possible. And this freedom allows them to explore new insights and new mechanics, unconventional ideas, and challenge themselves to establish the norms and ultimately craft this new piece of experience to publish it to the whole world. I think AAA games focus a lot on having the shiniest graphics, mainstream appeal, and financial success. These games are built to appeal to a broad demographic audience to justify their gigantic budgets, resulting in risk averse decision making. And with the noise that games will get more expensive because of the increasing expenses of developing a whole video game, a lot of times this leads to formulaic gameplay and a general sense that games feel safe and familiar with almost no innovation and creativity. Indie developers, on the other hand, aren't beholden to these constraints. You see, they don't need to please every gamer under the sun or hit every new genre trend. They can just make whatever pops into their head. No corporate overlords breathing down on their necks. And I genuinely think that that tiny thing, that independence, is what gives them the space to experiment and break conventions, explore, and take risks that AAA games typically cannot afford. And the result is a generation of games that feel fresh, unique, and sometimes downright unconventional. Indie games express a whole new vision, exploring new genres, or having me like this at the conclusion of the game. They often take us places that the bigger studios, for all their power, would never even dare to go. And that right there is part of the whole magic. And some of the indie games have become household names in the gaming community over the past few years. If I say indie game, you probably would think about Undertale, Celeste, or Hollow Knight, didn't you? They didn't come with much of anything, at least not in terms of resources. They had little to no mainstream hype, and yet somehow they found their audience. These games really resonated with players in ways that went far beyond the traditional entertainment. They connected with players not just because they were fun to play, but also they had something more, something unique, whether it was the art style or the storytelling or the gameplay itself. Every one of them has its own identity personality thing that makes them unique. And I think Undertale is a great example I want to show you of how it redefined what it meant to play an RPG by putting a huge emphasis on player choice and consequences. The game allowed players to solve conflicts in ways other than violence, letting them take a path that was entirely their own. It also introduced themes that were subtle but meaningful, like the power of kindness, the gray area between good and evil, and the idea that every action has its own consequences. Undertale not only played with gameplay mechanics, but also with the very concept of what a video game could be. It subverted player expectations, breaking the fourth wall, and even challenging the very conventions that RPGs had come to rely on for decades, even if it was a low quality pixelated game compared to the capabilities of gaming development. And what's even more impressive is that Undertale was the product of a single individual named Toby Fox. One person working in isolation created an experience that would go on to touch millions of people worldwide because he took the risk and did his own thing. And I think it's really incredible. That level of success from a single developer is not just a testament to Toby Fox's talent and vision, but also to the sheer power of indie games as a medium. Games like Undertale proves that creativity, passion, and hard work. Indie games have the potential to stand shoulder to shoulder with the AAA games. It's not about the size of the team or the budget, it's about the strength of the vision and the ability to connect with an audience on a deeper level. But wait, there's more. Hollow Knight, while similar in its humble beginnings, is another perfect example for me of how indie games can reach an extraordinary level of quality and impact. Hollow Knight is this beautiful, atmospheric Metroidvania that was developed by Team Cherry, a small indie studio from Australia. Despite its relatively low budget and modest start, it quickly became one of the most beloved games in the genre. Silksong, please release. The game combines tight controls, deep exploration, and a hauntingly gorgeous world to create an experience that players couldn't get enough of it. Flashy graphics or bombastic storylines to sell itself. It relied on its own world, its mechanics, and the emotional experience it gave players. The moment when you realize that the once noble protector of Hallownest is trapped in a tragic cycle of suffering and failure, I'm speechless. I'm I'm speechless. The quiet moments leading up to the final battle, paired with haunting music, make it feel like you're confronting this heartbreaking loop of pain and loss. Everyone comment a Silksong please release in the comments so that there might be a small chance that they'll see it. Seriously, the fact that Hollow Knight was able to stand out in such a crowded genre, especially against the backdrop of huge AAA releases like Breath of the Wild, Persona 5, and Resident Evil 7, 2017 was a great year, and it shows the resilience and creativity of indie developers. The game really felt personal and unique, and it wasn't trying to compete with other games in the same genre, but instead, it offered a fresh and uniquely challenged take on the Metroidvania formula and really did its own thing. One thing that I also like about Hollow Knight is, unlike many other modern Metroidvanias that focus on guiding the player through clearly marked paths or excessive tutorials, Hollow Knight embraced a more hands-off organic approach. The game doesn't hold your hand with a quest log or waypoint markers and forced exposition dumps. Instead, it trusts the player to piece together the story and world through environmental storytelling, cryptic NPC dialogue, and visual cues. I swear, every time I had the feeling that I was lost, but then I approached some random NPC and it, I instantly knew that I was on the right track. But this approach mirrors the design philosophy of Dark Souls, where the world itself tells the story, making every discovery feel meaningful rather than spoon fed. Its atmosphere is another outstanding factor of why Hollow Knight is so unique. While games like Ori and the Blind Forest lean into vibrant colors and deeply emotional narrative, Hollow Knight takes a different route with its haunting, somber beauty. I mean, look at this. This awakens some weird emotions and vibes I've never experienced before. You see, Hallownest feels abandoned yet alive, filled with melancholic, dead-like ruins. These eerie ambient sounds and a sense of history and lore that looms over everything. The hand-drawn art style with its muted color palette and minimalist yet expressive character design reinforces this sense of loneliness and mystery. The soundtrack by Christopher Larkin adds even more weight to the world. Tracks like City of Tears perfectly encapsulates the feeling of wandering through a once prosperous kingdom but now lost to time. And I really like this sense of exploration, discovery, and the satisfaction of mastering its world. It felt really rewarding. Unlike many games that makes progression obvious, Hollow Knight encourages curiosity. A seemingly unreachable ledge early on might stick in the back of your mind, until hours later when you acquire the mantis claw and remember to return to that place. Hidden areas like the abyss or the hive aren't required to complete the game, but stumbling upon them feels like uncovering a long lost special secret, and it feels really rewarding. This method of rewarding persistence and curiosity is reminiscent of older titles like Super Metroid, where sequence breaking and exploration are just as much a part of the experience. It felt like this game was made by people who actually loved games and had a passion and wanted to share that piece of love with the player. You can see this passion in the sheer attention to detail. Small flourishes like the way the knight's head slightly tilts when looking up, the way the enemies have unique resting animations when idle, or how NPCs like Elderbug here will comment on changes in the world after major events. That's attention to detail right there, and I love every second of it. Even the game's difficulty feels lovingly crafted, not punishing for the sake of it, but designed to push the player towards mastery. The developers at Team Cherry created an experience that pays homage to classic Metroidvanias while standing firmly as its own masterpiece. Silksong, please release. And these examples are all fantastic and all. I mean, I can go on about it for hours and hours. But they highlight the key reason why indie games have become so important to the conversation about gaming today. They offer experiences that you just can't find anywhere else and for a way cheaper price. Their artistic expressions and their ways for developers to connect with players on a deeper, more personal level. And that in itself is why they have become such a massive part of the gaming landscape. And that's one big thing that I miss with AAA games. The passion, the creativity isn't just there anymore. A lot of games now have battle passes, early access, 3 paid DLCs, and pay to win mentality. A lot of those games become a bit repetitive, and I would rather have them focused on creativity, innovation, and art style rather than the flashiest, most realistic graphics. The experience doesn't change much if you can't see the tiniest detail of Peter Parker's right eye or Kratos' beard, or if Kratos' beard has individually rendered hairs. But what does make a difference is when a game uses its style to enhance its world, like Celeste using its pixelated aesthetic to reflect to its themes of struggle and perseverance. Hollow Knight making its dark hand-drawn world feel melancholic and alive. Or Hades turning its vibrant, comic-inspired look into a perfect fit for its fast-paced underworld battles. That kind of artistry will stick with you way longer than Ultra HD sweat physics ever will. And I think with the rise of platforms like Steam, itch.io, and mobile stores, indie developers has given a chance to share their creations with the world like never before. These platforms have truly democratized the process of gaming development, providing developers with access to a global stage without a need for traditional backing of major publishers. Before the indie revolution, games were largely limited by physical distribution, channels, and the sheer size of the teams behind them. However, with the explosion of digital storefronts, developers are no longer confined by those constraints. They now have the opportunity to create something unique, innovative, and personal, and share it with players everywhere, regardless of the size of their team or budget. Hades is a game that went from a niche indie title to a massive success, all before it even made its way to consoles. This game didn't rely on a massive ad campaign or an army of marketers pushing it to the masses. Instead, it gained traction through word of mouth, critical acclaim, and the fervent support of its community. Hades proved to me that indie games don't need to be plugged into mainstream advertising machine to find their audience. When the game hit, it had already earned the respect of its players, who shared their love for the game far and wide. And that's what they're doing right now with Hades 2. The way they're developing it is a perfect example of why indie games feel so special to me. Instead of just dropping a finished product out of nowhere, Supergiant is once again using early access, letting players experience the game while it's still evolving, and fans get to provide feedback, report bugs, and even influence gameplay balance, creating a direct bond between the developers and its community. It's amazing. You should try Hades too. You should definitely try it. And it's this process that's built on trust, something you rarely see in AAA gaming, where most games launch half broken and rely on post-release patches to fix what should have been polished from the start. Cyberpunk 2077, for example. And with Hades 2, players are actively shaping it. And that kind of collaboration is what makes indie games feel so alive. They can kind of break through the noise and become cultural touchstones simply because they offer something fresh and exciting. It's this shift in how indie games reach their audiences, and it's completely reshaping the conversation around gaming. And Stardew Valley is this farming simulator that didn't just offer a way to grow crops and raise animals just like any other farming simulator. It gave players an entire life to manage. I don't know if I should remake this video. It was kind of trash. I mean, let me know in the comments if I should. But anyway, that aside, this game was soothing yet challenging in its own right, offering a rewarding experience that balanced hard work with personal growth. Cuphead, on the other hand, took a widely different approach, offering hand-drawn animation and an insane level of difficulty that harkened back to the golden age of cartoons. I remember playing it with a friend of mine, and he had carried me through the entire gameplay. I swear it was frustrating. Disco Elysium, on the other hand, broke away from the traditional RPG formula by focusing not just on battles, but on the inner struggles of the main character. It dived deep into philosophy, politics, and human nature, crafting a narrative that was as much about introspection as it was about external conflict, and had its own painterly, almost dreamlike art style. Another fascinating aspect of the indie gaming boom is the accessibility of these games. One of the most exciting things about the indie scene is how many developers design their games to be accessible to a broader audience. You don't need to own the latest, most expensive PC or a GPU that goes with only this CPU and that motherboard, and you need to manage the overclock speed or console to play many indie games. In fact, a lot of them are designed to run smoothly on older PCs, consoles like the Nintendo Switch, which is pretty underpowered compared to its time, or even mobile devices. Hollow Knight, for example, was praised for not just for its atmosphere and gameplay, but also for its ability to run on a variety of devices without sacrificing performance. And that's a huge deal in today's gaming's world, where the focus is often on pushing hardware to its limits. Indie games are proving that you don't need the most cutting-edge tech to deliver a top-tier gaming experience. To be frank, indie games have gone from a niche passion to a powerhouse that shapes the entire gaming industry. They've earned their spot at the table, proving that with creativity, passion, and a unique voice can stand toe to toe with the biggest titles out there. They've earned their spot at the table, proving that with creativity, passion, and a unique voice can stand toe to toe with the biggest titles out there. Thanks for hanging out with me today and exploring the rise of the indie games. I'd love to hear about your favorite indie game or one that deserves way more attention. Drop it in the comments down below, and if I missed anything, let me know. If you have enjoyed this video, a like or share with me in the world, and Of course, I'll see you somewhere around the YouTube surface. Goodbye.